Good morning, everybody. I'm Councillor Mike Adams. I'm the chair of the committee, and I'd like to welcome you all to the meeting of the Place Select Committee this morning. It's been broadcast live for publication. If I can just ask the committee to kick things off and approve the minutes from the last meeting. Show of hands, please. Thank you. And any apologies for absence?
No apologies, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. If any councillor or officer has an interest of any matter on the agenda, you should declare it now. Councillor Hollis? We'll switch your microphone on, can't if it is on.
Sorry, so just going back to agenda item 2, my colleagues Councillor Oliver and Williamson will be here in a few moments, stuck in traffic.
Thank you very much. So if anybody, going back to declarations of interest, if any councillor or officers have an interest of any matter on the agenda, please declare it now. Please raise your hand if you have an interest to declare, and if you have an interest to declare, you should state what type of interest it is and give brief details, please. Anybody? All good? Okay, great. Right, well then we'll dive straight in to the agenda today. We're going to kick things off with a highways update. So if I could invite Councillor Neil Clark, who's the member for Transport and Environment, Cabinet Member for Transport and Environment, to introduce the report, please.
Thanks very much indeed, Chairman. I will be quite brief because I think the report is straightforward and does tell the whole story, but really more just to highlight what's been going on. And I just want to emphasise the tremendous amount of hard work that has been put in by both the highways officers and, of course, via carrying out the actual work. Because we've substantially increased the investment that's been going into the highways, and you can see there paragraph 2 tells you everything, investing £66.5 million into highways during this last year, and the breakdown is there for you to see. There's never enough money, Chairman. Obviously, if it was possible to put all the council's money into roads, we may well get on top of it. But quite rightly, there's demands across the whole council with all the services, looking after our elderly and vulnerable people, to name just a couple of functions. But obviously, we need to make sure that all services are delivered across the whole council. So in view of funding, and you see paragraph 3 talks about MCA, and we are still awaiting the allocation of further funding from MCA, which is from the government and delivered via MCA. And indeed, there's a meeting of the Transport Committee at MCA in the next couple of weeks, which I shall be asking for a commitment as to additional funding coming to us. So that is something that very much is on our radar. But in terms of during the winter, we've always got lots of issues, flooding issues, which damages the roads, in addition to the regular scheduled work. But you can see there at the bottom of page 12, and we're talking about additional drainage works and winter readiness, etc. And with flooding issues that do occur, there's always a problem with gullies getting blocked for a variety of reasons. There isn't any one reason. They could be blocked with silt, they could be blocked with debris, something could have happened with the gullies, etc. But you can see there, I just want to highlight the 467,000 additional money that's been allocated in order to, and we've really got ahead with a drain clearing programme, and VIA have done a great job in improving that and escalating the amount of work that is taking place, and you can see that with the increase of tankers from 2 to 7. So I think that shows the council's commitment to address that problem. I think there are always ongoing issues with improving the roads, always the scheduled. We're continuing with our programme of changing, well, we've already changed, by reducing the small pothole repairs and changing the emphasis to larger patch repairs. And I think that is evident, and can be seen around the county. There's always going to be pothole damage. I don't think any road in the country is ever going to be perfect, but I think that this council has, no pun intended, made significant inroads into improvements. We've got highways officers here, Chairman. I think if there are any questions, and obviously we'll endeavour to answer them.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'll move the recommendations as detailed in the report. And if I can have a second there, please. Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. What we'll do is open the floor to debate, but I'm going to actually just kick things off a little bit. What was very clear from your report there, Councillor Clark, was the fact that we're looking. This is a strategic report. We're looking at the overall aims and interests and long-term plans to resolve issues that we've got with the highways. And I think to talk to the members of the group, that is again what we're here to do today. We all have the right routes, if you like, through our highways managers to be able to escalate specific issues to specific roads. And I personally actively use those constantly in order to ensure that that information is relayed when issues occur, and I'm sure all the members do as well. So again, let's keep the focus of the debate on that. What I'd like to do is give everyone an opportunity to have a question each. If I think it's a very popular subject, so I think everybody's probably going to have something to raise, something to say. So we'll go around and everyone can have a question each first, and then once we've got through all of those individual questions, we'll then come around again and see how we're doing at the end in terms of time and the meeting as well. And finally, yes, please be specific with questions. As I said, it's a big issue. Arguably, it's the most important issue in many ways to our residents out there. So let's keep these questions as direct as possible and around the specific strategic, like I said, which focuses on the long-term and overall aims of the council rather than specific issues in your districts. Okay, great. So the first speaker I've got is Councillor Upton, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I do endorse your view that this should be strategic debate, not items in a division. So my strategic question is, from personal experience, using hot materials to repair roads and potholes, in my opinion, is the best option. And I'm pleased to see that the cold rolled or cold material, commonly called ViaFix, I believe, is being reduced. And I applaud that. Nevertheless, I think there is a situation where you could have an emergency pothole where there still is a case to use a cold rolled material such as ViaFix. But what I'm coming round to is the question. I'm pleased to see its use is being reduced. Is that the case that it will continue to be reduced, and how is it being reduced? Is it by larger patching repairs that are hot material or whatever? That's my broad question, Chairman.
Well, the answer basically, Chairman, is yes. There is an ambition definitely to reduce the use of it as much as possible. As I think I indicated in my introductory comments, we'll never eliminate it completely because there'll always be an emergency pothole repair required somewhere. But the absolute ambition and aim is to reduce it, keep reducing it as much as we can, and to keep on with the aim of having the larger patch repairs, which obviously will are quite evidently they're better and they're longer lasting as well, and that's why that extra investment has been put in. So absolutely, that is the aim and ambition.
Councillor Callaghan, please. Thank you.
I'd just like to say thank you for this report. It's really well written. But I'd just like to come to page 12 and paragraph 11. I know we haven't got this winter over as yet, but how has this winter compared with last? And has our winter readiness programme started to be successful?
Shall I carry on with that, Chairman? Well, I think I partially also indicated in my introductory comments, but you're right, I think, in your assumption that last year, Babette and Henk, I mean, they were horrendous for the roads and they really churned up the roads, etc. The flooding that's taken place so far this winter has had some damage to the roads, but not as bad as that. But also, our winter readiness has been better, and we've been ready and tried to get ahead of the game by ensuring as much as possible, or trying to address repairs to get them repaired prior to the winter so they don't get any worse. You're quite right. We don't know when the winter is going to finish. For instance, this coming weekend, we have the prospect or the forecast of heavy rain and high winds. So we don't know how much that's going to damage the roads, etc. And of course, bad weather does slow down repairs taking place in itself. But I think the basic answer to your question is we are better prepared this last winter or this current winter than we were previously.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ogle, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Utility works have been inspected now. They didn't used to be. So one period they'd stopped inspecting them, and at that time a lot were cut by either electrical or telephone companies or water companies. So they've been inspected now, which is good. I was talking to somebody who had retired, but he'd actually worked in private business, and previous to that he'd worked for the county council, and he was telling me in the late 80s and 90s, when they did things properly in those days, that he had to get in the trench and he had to get his hands round anything that had been replaced, any drain being cut, make sure it was all done properly, and you used to have to get in and feel all the way around it to make sure it was done. So it's not just an ordinary inspection that perhaps isn't sufficient on his recommendations. But how does the council proactively monitor the utility works now, and what mechanisms are in place to address deviations from remediation standards or damage to infrastructure? How is coordination with utility companies ensured to minimise disruptions? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Well, I do share your concern about reinstatement of utility work. I'm going to ask Gareth Johnson to give you a bit more detail just in a second, but I've been very keen myself because I've experienced or noticed some utilities are better or worse than others, whichever way around you want to put it. I wouldn't say they're all consistently as good as each other. And I've myself seen reinstatement works which clearly haven't been up to standard. Because as far as I'm concerned, it should be reinstated back to how it was, just by saying, well, we've filled it in and it's okay. Well, no, that's not okay. It's got to be a reinstatement. Is quite clear to me. It's what it says on the tin, and it should be back to what it was. And I have in 2 or 3 times requested that the utility company, whoever it may be, sorry, that's that trench. You bump into it when you drive over it. Go back and do it again, and they have been told to go back and do it again. If I could just invite Gareth Johnson, could I just to fill in a bit more detail, please, Chairman?
Thank you, Councillor. I spoke before Christmas about the street works permit stuff, and you're quite right, Councillor. We do have a lot more inspections than we ever used to do. We have eight inspectors now working out of Via. We used to have two probably prior to 2020, so there's a fourfold increase there in the number of inspections that are happening. I would suspect there are reasonable health and safety reasons why they don't jump in trenches and manhandle the pipe work like they used to do, and maybe in the 70s and 80s, but still. In terms of coordination as well, we have a big team in Via that are responsible for that. Every application for works now in the authority has to be fielded by the coordination team, has to be approved in advance, and they have to follow the conditions that apply to those works as they come in. And in terms of reinstatements, it's national guidelines. Unfortunately, they have to reinstate to it's a national published guidelines. They have to meet a certain standard, and the inspectors will inspect, and we do fail them. But to go above and beyond that, I think we wouldn't be able to do that. Utilities are quite smart; they know exactly what they're doing. So that work is ongoing. It's happening right now, and we can provide further statistics if that's of interest.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hollis, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Every year I sit here and look at these reports with increasing frustration. In 2002, I stated that this council's attitude was marking its own homework over road repairs, leave the council open to ridicule. I said it again in 2021, 19, and before. This report simply doesn't reflect what people think and see on the ground. Let's look at the facts that you won't see in this report. Last year, the number of claims received as a result of vehicle damage to potholes was 1,968. That's up. The total number of claimants that received payment on the back of their claim for vehicle damage due to potholes was 463. That was up. The average payout value in pounds for claims received as a result of damage due to potholes was £296.56. That was up. The amount of potholes reported was 62,288. That was also up. Recent analysis found in Nottinghamshire was with 1,231,082p. Sorry, £1,231 per mile to fix potholes. Yet our council has a deserved reputation as the capital for potholes. Despite this, both Conservative and Labour councillors of this authority voted to extend the contract for Via East Midlands for a further 5 years, just recently. Do you feel that the problem is the process, that the company tasked with fixing our broken roads and pavements being solely owned by Nottinghamshire County Council is the problem, or do you believe that it's willful ignorance at odds with the public is the problem? Further to this, in paragraph 27, it lists 7 things that this council has to improve communications. It actually states that one of this council's communication priorities is to dispel myths. Yet all residents need to do is open their curtains or travel a short distance just to know how bad things are. These are not myths, Mr. Chairman, and in fact, that you are stating they are in the report is an insult to the tens of thousands of residents across Nottinghamshire. They are facts, and the reality is that labouring under false pretences and residents are putting their lives at risk, their vehicles at risks on Nottinghamshire's broken roads. And ultimately, Mr. Chairman, you don't have to take my word for it. During last year's combined authority elections, the former council leader, now reinstated cabinet member Ben Bradley, was touring Nottinghamshire with huge placards exclaiming, "Fix the roads." This is being in charge of despite being in charge of them for 7 years. And Mr. Chairman, this is what he said.
They need fixing.
He said they're absolutely awful and they need fixing. That was Mr. Ben Bradley. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. That was a new moment in this committee. I've never had a live stream or even an old stream. To you, Councillor Clark, please. Thank you.
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of that was just political rhetoric because it's not factually true, because this business about capital, that's not true at all, because it's been in the press, and even a Labour MP has even talked about other areas of the country being the worst. So not least in Derbyshire and in Wales and the Cheshire border. So that's just not true. I think the only thing to answer is that I wouldn't agree with either of the questions that he posed, because I already talked in my introductory comments about the fact that, in answer to Councillor Callahan's question, that the last winter was far worse, and so the challenges were greatly increased, and that's why the claims will have increased because of those horrendous storms, which was acknowledged that hit Nottinghamshire probably worse than anywhere else in the country. And so there were tremendous challenges there, but I've already outlined how much work that has taken place. In fact, I would even not just saying no to the question, but actually applaud VIA for the amount of work and additional work that has been put in by the workforce in ensuring that repairs are carried out. So in terms of money, and we're back to money again, and we can always do a lot better. As I said several times in my introductory comments, I'm not claiming everything's perfect. Of course it's not. If we had more money available, things would be a lot better, because sadly the state of the repairs is related directly to money. More money means more repairs can be carried out. However, what has happened over the last year or two since we had the Highways Review is the method of working and the efficiency has increased substantially. So despite me saying there isn't enough money, what I can say is the amount of work per pound has increased, and so therefore we are getting more for our buck than we were a few years ago. So things are improving, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your answer on that. And I just on the claim side of things, I'm guessing the claims go through the legal department, isn't it? And I understand that side of it could be picked up through overview, Councillor Hollis, if it's something you want to look at further. I think it's an overview function, as I understand.
Yeah, it's certainly not a political matter. I don't know if anybody else, or whether Derek Hickton might like to just outline the legal position, because it's certainly not something we get involved in.
Yeah, absolutely, Chairman. Our pothole-related and highways-related claims in their different forms are dealt with through our risk and insurance team. So that is falls under the purview in scrutiny terms of overview rather than place select committee. I think it's something that's been discussed previously, so it may be something that's featuring on a forward plan somewhere, but yes, it's dealt with at a corporate level.
Yeah. Direct any questions to overview in terms of legal process. I think it's. Let me just check my list. I'm just checking my list. Sue, wait a second to make sure you're next. Do you want to go ahead? Thank you, Councillor Saddington.
Right, thank you. Just a couple of points, actually. I have to say that I think Councillor Hollis needs to remember that we have far more vehicles on the road than we had 10 years ago. So obviously we're going to get far more potholes. And in addition to that, I think we got worse weather than we had 10 years ago, consequently creating potholes and bad conditions on the road. But I have to say, it's very clear that the leadership team and Highways Department are trying to get potholes done as quickly as they can, and for that I appreciate it. And I think the hotboxing that we've got is absolutely superb. It leaves a road looking like a new surface, although it may only be a part. So I think we have to be
careful before we criticise, because we are doing the best we can do. And don't forget, when it rains, they can't even repair the roads. And we've had plenty of heavy rain recently and some more predicted. But what I wanted to come round to really was the drainage. When I first started here, and that's quite a long time ago, I once remember getting a piece of paper from the then Highways Department, which said that a certain number of my councils, parish councils, had decided they'd like their drains flushing. And there were only about half of the councils that I represent. And even to this day, when they complain, I often think, why did they never ask for their gullies and drains to be flushed? You know, they had that opportunity donkey's years ago. So I come round to the drainage, which I don't think is the fault of the councils whatsoever. We have leaves falling off the trees in autumn. We have leaves falling off the trees when we get heavy wind, which we're going to have this weekend. We get mud on the road from vehicles that come off building sites, trailing all the mud everywhere. And we get soil off the land. And this all in turn washes into the drains. Then along comes a heavy storm and we have a problem with the drains, not to mention tree sticks from the trees that drop through sometimes. So I'm just wondering, I hear we've got lots more vehicles and I appreciate that. And I think as we sit here, we can probably, many of us think we've had our drains flushed, which is absolutely superb. But what worries me is when we get a storm this weekend, which is totally out of our hands, you just wonder how many of those drains are going to overflow again. And that's, I think, a problem, not one of ours, but one that we have to deal with. So it's just mindful of, I'm really asking, do we have a programme of when each village is going to be flushed? Right, thank you.
Thanks, Joan. Well, yes, Councillor Saddington's quite right. It's a bit like painting the fourth rail bridge, really, isn't it? You can clear out the drains and gullies, and depending on the weather and road conditions, they could get blocked up again in a few months' time. Certainly, in answer to your last question, there is a schedule of maintenance, and that depends on the location as to where the drains are. There's somewhere in excess of 140 odd thousand drain gullies around the county, and due to that extra investment of 467,000 that was put in, I think it's something like 110 odd thousand of them have been cleared this last year. It doesn't mean that they are going to be clear forever, and I'm quite sure that depending on, and Councillor Saddington highlighted some perfect scenarios. In heavy rain, the soil comes off the fields and goes down the roads, and all that silt, which I mentioned in my earlier comments, blocks up the gullies. And mix that with a cocktail of leaves at certain times of the year, or twigs, etc. After high winds, all the trees and the branches and the twigs are all coming down, and that all contributes to blockages. So it's a constant program of having to clear those regularly, and some have to be cleared more regularly than others. I'm sure that councillors do report them, because I'm sure that councillors are not slow in reporting them to their either district managers or whoever. But it's just a question of keeping reporting them, and there is that increased schedule which I mentioned, and just to repeat, the increase of the fleet of tankers from 2 to 7, and the corresponding personnel that go along with it. I've been out and visited the teams out, and there is a dedicated tanker team as well that goes around to investigate blockages. They don't just turn up and say, "Oh, that's blocked, can't do anything with it." There is a dedicated team that actually surveys any large blockages in order to attempt to get them cleared, even if it means returning and digging out, should I say, rather than just there's the flushing out that Councillor Saddington mentioned, but if they're really blocked, then there's the digging out that would be required as well. So I think hopefully I've illustrated that increased regime of clearing the drains and gullies.
Just on that second, in terms of when you've been out, when they've been out digging the drains out, I suppose with the increase in surveying as well, have they found more than what they thought existed as well, and therefore that's then added to that workload as they've gone around? Have you noticed?
I'm not sure I can give a definitive answer to that, but I might refer back to officers as I suspect the answer is yes, but I'm not sure. Or maybe Derek.
Thanks, Chairman. Yeah, one of the consequences of the increased work we've done around drains and drainage is that we found, obviously, that in the majority of cases we can clear a drain through, as Councillor Saddington said, by kind of flushing it through. There are a number that we've identified where the problem is more significant, and that requires much more of a planned piece of work for us to undertake in order to resolve whatever the issue may be. So it may be a collapse, it may be a much more substantial blockage that we can't resolve in the usual way. So what we've done is, in those circumstances, there are quite a few because we have such an extensive highways drainage network around the county. So with 2,500 miles of highway, you have the equivalent volume of drainage underneath that and around it. So where we've identified those locations, we're pulling together a potential programme to cost and then address and resolve those issues. That won't be an insignificant volume of cash that will be required to resolve those, because some of the works required will be extensive, we anticipate. And therefore, once we've done that, the challenge will be to identify and allocate funding to resolve those, what in some cases will be quite long-standing and significant issues.
Thank you very much for that. Elizabeth, Councillor Williamson, please. Councillor, oh, you are. Look, yeah.
Yes, sorry. The report states in paragraph 4 that 25,202 pothole repairs have been carried out in this financial year. But according to a Freedom of Information request in December 2024, last year saw 62,288 potholes reported. Despite asking on multiple occasions, Council have refused to tell members how many potholes have been revisited. So my question is, how many potholes have been revisited during this year? Thank you.
Thank you for that. Just on that, Councillor Williamson, I'm not sure if you've noticed, but paragraph 4 of the report does mention that it's during quarters 1 and 2. So that may be where the number's a little bit less, but I'm sure one of the officers will be glad to reply with the rest of your questions, if that's okay. Thank you.
Chairman, so this is a topic that's been discussed in I think select committee and also in previous place committees in the past, and for a number of reasons it's quite hard for us to monitor where we've done repeat visits to individual, as it were, pothole sites, because of course we have in a number of locations more than one kind of defect on the road in close proximity. So we find it quite hard to monitor and then report on kind of repeat visits on a pothole by pothole basis. So that's the challenge that we have always faced and will continue to face. But we're happy to pick that up as an individual issue with Councillor Williamson separately.
Can I just suggest as well? I mean, there's obviously the what 3 words app that's around. If you've noticed or come across that before, I think it's within 3 meters or something like that of the exact. Is it within 1 meter of the exact location? So what I've started to do is track it with the what 3 words code, and it's a good way to sort of go back and refer back yourself if there's no actual data. I mean, personally, I'd and again for an advancement in the future, I'd love to see that incorporated into the reporting system, and then we get that data. So yeah, thank you. Thanks for replying, and thanks very much for the question. I think I've got Councillor Barney, I believe, next. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you as well. I echo the words of what he said about the report. Fantastic. Also, my thanks again to officers, particularly been through another round of storms. I'm always amazed by how supportive they are to me as a local ward member in taking immediate actions to protect lives by emergency repairs, particularly as we've seen in the last couple of weeks. So phenomenal. That said, as well, it's always a joy to hear our former leader, Ben Bradley. Great to have his words echoing in the chamber. You know, the more we can hear from that man, the better, as far as I'm concerned. But I take it, I take Councillor Hollis on his word that the comments given by Ben Bradley on that recording were in relation to roads, and I completely understand and would wholeheartedly endorse if indeed they were about the state and the condition of some of the roads, because I don't think anybody in this chamber, officers or councillors, are here to try and gloss over that we've got issues. It's an ongoing saga. We're repairing thousands and thousands of miles of road network through the county, but still, as a new councillor, almost 4 years in the running, I can see that my role as a councillor is to work as closely and as possibly as I can with our colleagues in fire, build strong relationships, which I believe I've done, and advocate on behalf of my residents with passion, with sometimes frustration at the state of some of the situations in which we find our roads, to try and get them up the priority list so that we can indeed get action. And I think in my last 4 years as a councillor, working really closely with colleagues in fire, that we have seen some of those roads, those long-standing roads, which are ever competing for resources against the whole county, improved. And I'm proud of that record, and I'm proud of the work that I've done. And I'm really pleased to have played a very small role in joining up the dots as a councillor in advocating for my residents in my patch, not least at the last full council when I presented 2 petitions about the state of some horrific roads in my patch, which I'm not embarrassed to say need urgent repair and attention. So sorry, little preach over. I've actually, not to be parochial, we're not supposed to be being, are we? I wanted to actually ask about the AI, Visalia Road AI. Golden bullet of AI. Is it going to make a huge difference for Nottinghamshire roads? Is it going to save us a fortune so we can spend more money on things like adult social care? Thank you very much.
To you.
Yeah, you're starting to get out of my comfort zone quite considerably now, talking about AI, and I'm going to desperately ask somebody else if they could answer that.
Yeah, so it's probably not going to be something that's going to effectively revolutionise the highway service. What it is going to do is it gives us an exceptional amount of data about our asset, and with that data we can then plan where we spend our maintenance better. And just for those that aren't aware, because obviously it's just a brand name that's been put in, it effectively gives us what we would all on a day-to-day use as Google Street View of our whole road network. So if we've got a main road that's inspected 12 times a year, we're then getting 12 times the amount of data we would have got before using traditional methods such as the scanner and CVR.
Could I just add one thing? I don't know whether it does come under the title of AI or not, but just following on from what James just been talking about, is that VIA did introduce a year or so ago the video surveys as the inspectors are driving along. The videos are constantly surveying the roads so they can pick up any repairs that are required. Whether you count that as part of AI or not, I'm not quite sure, but it's increased technology, shall we put it that way?
Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to move on now to Councillor Oliver, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's great to hear Councillor Barney talk so highly of AI. Ashfield Independence as a golden bullet. I'm sure Councillor Hodges will love that. But no, on a more pressing point.
Artificial
Yes, we know, Councillor Barney.
There's quite a few independent groups around.
Yeah. Anyway, I think Councillor Clark must live in a parallel universe. Nothing's perfect. Probably the most honest thing I've heard him say on that side of the chamber. But moving on, Councillor Saddington, we can all say that Councillor Hollis isn't considering cars and the increase amount of vehicles on our road. Well, actually, perhaps you aren't either. In the past 10 years, we've seen an increase of 14%. I just quickly did a little bit of research. That's an increase of 1.58% per year. Council taxes increased 44% in cars. 14% in the past 10 years. Council taxes.
That's why we have to queue so much then.
Oh, well, listen, I'm not a traffic expert, but...
Sorry, can we just let Councillor Oliver finish his question?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Which is 44% increase in council tax. That's not even including the social precept. So the way I look at it in them figures, we're moving in the right direction alongside the vehicle improvements, but the roads aren't. Is the bottom line of that. So what I'm coming to is that we spoke about 25,000 potholes across the borough, and across the county that were repaired last year. Yeah, there's no actually geographical data, and I come back to you here, Derek. You said you find it hard to know where we've revisited, to know the exact locations. Well, we can talk about AI, we can talk about technology. Then surely the focus needs to be on why haven't we got a system in place that can monitor and track exactly to the point of location. There is modern things such as what 3 words, up to a meter. That's good enough for me. I'm even interested in knowing how many times you've revisited certain roads within the district. I'm sure all of that is easily accessible. I mean, I certainly had a conversation with an inspector that came out to a road that I spoke to you about not too long ago. And the amount of detail that gentleman was taking from the photos to measuring to reporting, that says to me that answer, excuse me for saying, was a bit of a cop-out. And I think you do have that data to a certain level. And even if it is down to the streets, knowing that, have we gone back to that street to revisit it? Have we found more potholes? Has there been more issues? But more importantly, we only have this data due to the press, due to the Nottingham Evening Post, who did an FOI last year, that we basically found out that we spent £260,000, obviously, on this Roadmaster Magic pothole repairer. And it had been in, obviously, Councillor Clark's home village, which we spoke about before, 4 times, and compared to only once in the district of Broxton Borough. So would you agree with me, and the question coming here, that as well as what we're talking about tracking the data, that this was perceived as abuse of power, and the failure to include any geographical, and this is where it comes back, geographical data leaves this county council vulnerable to allegations of misuse of public funds. So can I formally request that in the future, moving forward, and perhaps looking back in the past, that we request this data by borough and district to help give us a more precise and clear understanding of where the council taxpayers' money is being spent.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Just to dive in 1 second, and for the 3 people, maybe 4 that are listening at home. In terms of council tax increase, I just want to make a quick point that we do more than just roads here. I mean, if we could allocate a direct 44% increase in council tax directly to roads, I think we'd have that'd be quite a significant amount of money. The council looks after adult social care, children and families. There's obviously many other things that we do, education, that mean that's why the council tax has to increase. I just want to make that clear to everybody that does not directly relate to the amount of increased traffic and therefore an increase in the highways budget as a result. For the other points, over to yourself, please.
Well, I'm going to ask Dirk Hitton just to comment a bit, but I'll just correct, as usual, totally incorrect information comes out from some people. The Roadmaster has never done any work in my home village ever. Or certainly not in my lifetime anyway. In terms of the council tax, 3% of the budget is spent on roads, And if I don't know if Derek Heaton wants to make any other clarification of anything, but a lot of that obviously was rhetoric.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Clark. So, as far as data is concerned, my response previously related to specific pothole locations. We are, of course, in a place where we, if we aggregate information up to road or district level, then that information is much easier to gather and report upon. And of course, we're in a space where, should the committee ask it, then we're in a place where we can certainly provide a district by district breakdown of the kind of work that is covered in this report. And there's no reason why in future reports we can't cover off that information.
Thank you. I must apologise, Councillor Gowland. I've circled you. I've not been to speak to you yet, so I apologise. So over to you, please, if you want to raise your question.
Thanks. I just heard my name just then. Okay, well, it's good coming last because I can pick up on lots of things. So, first of all, I'd just like to discuss the issue of the number of cars increasing. The number of cars increased by 14%. In 7 years, the weight of cars has increased by 400 kilograms. Yes, partly due to EVs, but mostly due to SUVs. And they've gone from, just put that in context, a small car is 1,000 kilograms. So 400 kilograms on that is a huge increase. And that energy goes into the roads. And that is a large factor driving these potholes. So we want less potholes, smaller cars. The weather's driven by climate change. You know where I'm going with this. I'd also like to point out that speed has a big impact on the energy of the car. And as you decelerate at the junctions, you churn up the road. You can see that. That's where the potholes are. A lot of them are. So again, and of course going over the bumps. So, reducing speed in residential areas will not only reduce your insurance, as we now know, but will also reduce the road repairs. However, I just wanted to pick up on a couple of things. AI presumably will be used to predict where the roads are going to break down, as well as just see where they're breaking down in the long term. And the insurance claims, it seems a bit strange to totally decouple it from this area, because from this committee, because if we've got more potholes and more claims, presumably it's putting out the insurance, which we should know about. But my actual question was very specific. So, as you know, I cycle. And I have a lot of people in my area who've had accidents as pedestrians. And so much as I agree in principle with, first repair, first time, best with full repair, first time principle, come and cycle with me along the Radcliffe Road. Every single drain has a gully along, a cut along the edge of it, which you can go down in a bike. And of course, you're cycling along there in the middle of the lane. The cars don't understand why, because if you go down that gully, you're coming off your bike. And none of those counts as an accidental, as a dangerous pothole for the council, apparently. Every one of them could be filled with Viafix, I would think, because they're just a small little channel where the cars aren't really going. But because we're not using Viafix, we're not fixing the small potholes. So my specific question is, we may be doing more, bigger areas, but are we fixing more potholes? Are we missing the small ones? And specifically, are we missing the small potholes on the pavements?
So yeah, a couple of points from that. Hovercrafts are the future. And come cycle with me, coming to a television near you on YouTube, with you and Penny doing laps up and down the roads of Lady Bay by the side. Other than that, if you can answer Councillor Gowland's question, thank you.
Sorry, what was that you just said? Councillor Gowland makes a very valid point, actually. It's not just the increase in the volume of traffic. That's a point I meant to mention earlier. It is the weight of the vehicles, not just cars, but the average weight of HGVs is increasing as well, as is the number of tyres that HGVs have on the roads. And of course, the irony is that the move towards more electric vehicles means greater weight of batteries in cars as well. So you're quite right. There is a lot more pressure on the road surfaces. In terms of the number of potholes fixed in terms of small ones, I can't really give you any accurate information on that. I don't know if anybody else is able to. But when I take your point about slivers, if you like, or small potholes directly by drains, etc., or by the curbstone, I fully understand that, and that is an issue. But also, what I can assure you is potholes in pavements are addressed as well, because I've had that. I've reported those in my own area, and it's more. Sometimes it's not potholes. Often it's cracks, and then the crack gradually widens due to the rain, etc. So those cracks, which can be quite long, they need filling as well. So pavements are part of the highway, and therefore they are part of the repairs that take place. In terms of numbers, I don't know if anybody can help.
Yeah, thanks. I think that's something we could take away and provide a detailed update on. I think on that question.
Just nipping back to, I just need to do a point of clarification for the people at home that AI does mean artificial intelligence. But secondly, if you go onto a well-known video site as well, YouTube, you can watch a video of which I did before this committee. I used to have a life before I was a county councillor, and you can go on and actually watch Visala in operation. So if you have a look at it, you can see what it does. It's a very clever piece of equipment, and will definitely go on to helping us, like you rightly said, see the deterioration of a road over a period rather than just being when it goes wrong, fails properly, if you like. Really good advancement and things we should be looking at to try and enhance our offer. I think so. That's positive news. Yep, so I'm just going to go on to Martin now, who will provide us with a summary of the discussion. Before I do that, I'll remember again Richard Butler, who I also forgot. Sorry, Richard, you're forgotten everybody today.
Patient as ever,
doing so well.
I won't
After
make
you.
it first. I actually, here picking up on Councillor Saddington's comment, I go back even further than Councillor Saddington. I think back to sort of 23, 24 years ago when I first sort of got onto this council, and for years before that, the big issue people were moaning about, including myself, was the state of the roads back then. So it's nothing new, but yes, it is still bad. I mean, if I remember, because my part of Nottinghamshire is near the Leicestershire border, and we always used to say that you knew when you were coming back into Nottinghamshire because you felt it when you crossed the border from Leicestershire into Nottinghamshire. So the roads were bad then. And Councillor Gowland's quite right about the extra traffic and the weight of traffic as well. It really has having an impact. Anyway, that's all said. We're going back to what's happening today. We've all seen and spoken in the past about repairs that are being carried out on the roads, pothole repairs. And very often we've asked the question, well, why are you doing that? Why aren't you, or why can't you sort of go a little bit further down the road while you're here, type of thing? And that has been picked up on over the recent years and months. And now you have this preventative measures idea, and also you refer to the right first time patching repairs. So what sort of difference is that making? How do we think that's working in regards to hopefully, well, not hopefully having to repair, we know we have to repair potholes, but trying to ensure that those repairs are better condition and will last longer, but also what can we do, or what are we doing to try and prevent the roads breaking up even more than they are? Thank you.
Well, I think it's a question of, I refer the member to the comments I made a few moments ago. I think as my introductory comments, we are doing a tremendous amount. Every area in the country, not the county, experiences these problems, and yes, some areas are better than others. I think I've already demonstrated with the extra financial resources that we are have attracted and are attempting to attract, that we will continue to do more, and we will continue to improve and make sure the extra gangs, etc., are employed as and when we have the resources available. So it's an ongoing issue that will, as I say, with Fourth Rail Bridge painting, it's never ending.
Thank you. Thanks for that. And just to again, I don't know why I'm doing so many public announcements today, but there's a website called notshighways.co.uk which is available to anybody that wishes to access it. And on there you'll see works that have been completed by the county council. It gives you an idea of the sort of volume in terms of metres squared that's been completed by the council, and you can also search using your postcode as well to find that information. So if you want to see some before and afters of work that's been done in your area, I think it's 2,600 miles of highway we've got across Notts. So I think it was yourself, Councillor Barney, that said thousands of miles. You're right. So it's a lot of distance to cover. But yeah, notshighways.co.uk is a good place to go and have a look and find out what we've been up to, and also what the planned works are as well. All that information is on there. So yes, so sorry, now we've completed that. I've not forgotten anybody else, have I? Just to check before. No, good, lovely. Thank you very much. I'm having an absolute nightmare with that today. Yeah, so I'm going to go over to Martin now to please read out a summary of the discussion and to detail any issues there have arisen. Thank you, Martin.
Yeah, I think they've all kind of come up in the last kind of like 10 minutes or so, but there's a bit of further information that members would like requesting, so that we'll request that we get the information on the number of repairs carried out in quarter 1 and quarter 2 of this year by district circulated to members, and that you'll also request that future reports include that breakdown by district information, and then that further information is circulated to members on the size, type of potholes that are repaired, so we'll get that sorted out as well.
Great. Okay. Lovely.
And just to note finally, obviously we won't bring it back, but we will be obviously bringing highways back next year for a further update.
Same time next year. So yeah, I hope that's all been captured for you. You're happy as far as the conversation's concerned. You know, I appreciate there's views on different parts of the network and how things are going. But if we could please take a vote as a show of hands to confirm that we are happy to take those comments on board and move forward with the report. Thank you. I'm going to go 3, 6, 8. And those abstentions? Okay. And against? Thank you. Have you got one? Yeah, lovely. Right, great. Thank you very much, and thank you to colleagues for the information on the highways update and for all of your comments and observations as well. So that brings us nicely onto agenda item 5, which is the outcomes of the scrutiny review, which we completed. Which we've completed as a group in terms of the flooding response and resilience. So in terms of this report, if we can go to yourselves to present, or we present. Oh right, sorry, of course, sorry. What's wrong with me today? Yes, so as you all know, I'll find my notes in a minute. I promise you, I do have a rough idea of what I'm doing. There it is. That's what I was looking for. Yes. So going back to Storm Babette and Storm Henk, it was actually the review from Storm Babette, which was caused by the extreme weather we had, where over 1,200 properties were flooded, which was communities across Nottinghamshire. The review was extensive. We dealt with. Obviously, it was across the board in terms of Severn Trent Water ourselves, the Environment Agency. We looked at our preparation for the event and the effectiveness, therefore, then of the response. And we looked at the impacts of climate change as well on our flooding approach and how residents and communities have been best prepared for that period. The report outlines key findings and recommendations which were to be put into place to improve our flood resilience. And that was through enhancing the communication in terms of the way that we put the information warnings and things like that out to the general public, as well as in creating a better awareness and engagement as well. And obviously, fundamentally from that came our notion to improve the drainage systems and gullies, as well as working closely with riparian landowners, which again, riparian, just as a reminder, is the people that live next to watercourses or owned by. The recommendations of the review are detailed in paragraph 96 of the report. Again, I'd like to extend all my thanks for the work that was put into that review, and partners and the officers as well who contributed to that. Yes, so if I can move that recommendation, please, and I could ask for a seconder. Councillor Callaghan, thank you very much. Yeah, at this point, refer to the officers then if there's anything you'd like to comment on at this point.
Well, not specifically, Chairman, because it is obviously your report, but perhaps I'll just try and use the opportunity to thank the officer team led by Sue very much for all the work that was put in. It's a long time ago now, isn't it? A year or more than a year ago on these storms. Spent an awful lot of time working on that, but also it's an opportunity, I think, perhaps for the Place Scrutiny Committee to recognise the efforts undertaken by local volunteers as well in helping their communities, because obviously the workforce can't be everywhere all at the same time, and the flood warden schemes continue to increase, and they play a very important part in helping with the communities. So I think through you, Chairman, maybe you might like to recognise the valuable work that is contributed by local volunteers in assisting the communities in times of flood.
Yeah, absolutely. The flood volunteers on Everton Commode have been incredible. They are the first out with the signage to make sure they've made residents aware, and they are the first to get out and close roads. And I'm sure you've got similar groups in your own areas doing the same things. And we really appreciate the work that they do, specifically as it's volunteer work as well, which goes even further, using their own time to look after their local area. It is a fantastic thing. So at this point, we've moved the recommendation. So I'm on that bit. Thank you. You've saved me on it. I appreciate it. I'm now going to open the floor for debate, please. Councillor Saddington to kick things off, please.
Well, first of all, my thanks to the flood team under the leadership of Sue. They are absolutely excellent in my division. I probably represent one of the highest flooding areas in the county, not least Kelham Bridge, which closes the complete village. And whenever it happens, I get a call from the flood team, for which I really appreciate. And furthermore than that, I get regular updates from the flood team as to where we are that day. And it is incredibly useful. And they're happy to meet me out on site or whatever. And I think we really need to pay compliments and thanks to the flood team, because it clearly is a very hard job at a difficult time when people are extremely stressed. We can't hold back the river, which in my division is the main problem. But I would like to ask that the EA come forward a bit faster with what they're going to do to mitigate the problems that I have in my area, although we're not talking about areas, but I do know that mine is one of the worst. And also insurance companies. They are very slow to react to residents. And I think that is one way we can probably help by seeing, that the other agencies that are involved with us really do get moving and do something to help these people. The other thing is, when the flood wardens and they do an excellent job throughout the villages. Out they go with the road closures, and along comes somebody who knows better than anybody and removes the flood notices, road closed. So then another driver comes along, splashes through it at some incredible rate, and pushes the bow wave into other people's houses. How we get over that problem, I don't know. But I was standing in Henk when the road closures were put out, and along they came with their cars, move the signs. When you tell them they're there for a reason, no, I can go through it, and off they go, and they cause flooding to other houses that may not in actual fact flood if people weren't going at a speed and moving the signs. But it is dangerous because nobody knows whether a cover has come off, and they could actually be down a big hole if they're walking. But they seem to think they have the overall say. How we stop that, I don't know. But certainly my thanks to the flood team.
Well, I think Councillor Saddington, she has rhetorically asked that question, and I agree with her. I don't know how you do stop people. I think every councillor could probably cite an example, as I can, of being out at a flood barrier and pleading with drivers to slow down, and even then getting. I think that's one of the worst. It's not just people ignoring them; it's when the drivers actually hurl abuse. I mean, they're volunteers, for goodness sake, Chairman, and they're there to help the community, and then they get abuse hurled at them by drivers who clearly do not realise the consequences of their arrogance when they then say, I can drive through there. Well, they probably can in their high vehicle, but they don't realise the consequences of the bow wave that then flows up somebody's front garden path and through the front door of their house. I think that's if the police happen to be around, but of course it's a very fortuitous thing if they were, but they are actually contravening a road closure, and the police could take action. But obviously, the police can't be at 57 road closures all around the county all at the same time. I think the best way of us, we just have to keep putting pleading messages out on whatever platform we can, in the media, however we can, to just plead with people to respect the closures. They are there for the safety. As Councillor Saddington quite rightly, a pedestrian could fall down a manhole, a car could get stuck in a displaced manhole cover, or there could be all sorts of debris under the water that you're not aware of that can cause danger. And we just need to keep repeating that message: stay out of the water. It's dangerous. And where we have the flood warden scheme training events, that's brilliant because the fire service comes along and explains the dangers of water. But obviously, getting that message out to 800,000 to 900,000 people around the county is not easy. We're talking about small numbers, but somehow we need to try and just keep getting that message out that people don't realise water is dangerous.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ogle, please.
Thank you, Chairman. The flooding experience throughout the county recently and in the past, because we've flooded several times, has resulted in a tremendous amount of work for the flood team investigating and rectifying. How do you decide which flooded properties, communities and parishes to prioritise and respond to? Because I know that this work's been building up and there's quite a lot of a lot of jobs to tackle.
Perhaps you'd like to bring Sue Yates in on that one, Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the question, Councillor Ogle. Good question. So, as a lead local flood authority, we are primarily responsible for surface water flooding. EA are responsible for the river flooding and Severn Trent for the foul water. So, in terms of our prioritisation of flood victims, and they are all incredibly important to us, our priorities are to look at those that are flooded by surface water, because that's within our gift to work with those properties sooner. We do, however, support the Environment Agency and Severn Trent with their schemes, but they are the lead authorities for those different types of flooding. We also prioritise those that have been repeatedly flooded, and sadly that's more of an occurrence now than it ever used to be. And we start to look at those schemes and properties that maybe wouldn't benefit from an engineering scheme or a larger scheme, but would benefit from a property flood resilience scheme. So properties that are a much smaller number, perhaps wouldn't trigger a section 19 where we've got 5 or more properties flooded in an area. We'll look at doing some individual property flood protection for those. But as you say, we're looking at over 2,000 properties now internally flooded across the county over the past 18 months.
Yeah, Councillor Connell.
Chairman, can I just, having just read the recommendation again, just a little gentle reminder that this conversation is about the approving your scrutiny review that is being passed to Cabinet. It's not about scrutinising every bit of flooding that's going on around the county.
Yeah, thank you. You beat me to it. I was just about to say exactly the same thing. But just a reminder that we are looking at this whole report that we've reviewed and been through together. Yes, absolutely right. Sorry, Councillor Ogle, did you want to just come back on a point that was to do with the report?
I just wondered whether you'd got to everybody, because I know in my area, thank you for the work you've done, but you've got to people, and it's juggling, because while you're dealing with, you've only got so many staff. While you're dealing with one, you've got another that is not been progressed, if you see what I mean. So I just wondered, is there must be a lot that's built up that you haven't actually got a result on, or you haven't resolved. What's the backlog? Have you got enough work? How many years will you be dealing with the backlog?
Is there a backlog in regards to this report? I'm guessing. Look, I mean, if there's anything in this report specifically about those, that I don't think there is. It's not something that's in this report, John. Maybe something to seek a question about afterwards, directly with the flood team. Yeah. I don't think there's anything to add to that. I honestly don't. I don't know what else we can say other than issues as they are logged are dealt with and as they are dealt with. I know, but I mean, it's just, it's not in the. It's sort of not focused about what we're trying to get through in terms of this report. That's I've got to say it to you like I say it to anybody else. If it's not in the report, we can't sort of debate that point.
Well, congratulations, Chairman. Looks like we're going to have a shorter meeting.
Thank you. Cheers. Thank you. Anyway, on that bombshell, can Councillor Oliver, please, if you'd like to come in, and please, if you can, keep it around the report. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it's very much about the report. Obviously, before speaking on this item, I'd like to thank Sue and the team, especially Josh, and all the staff working in the flood response and prevention at the County Council. It's obviously a complex issue, and the review, etc. It involves various partners, including Severn Trent, Canal River Trust, alongside the borough and district councils, and I appreciate all that. Just on a slight note, and it does reflect to this review, is that at the local MP of Broxtowe called a meeting in relation to the many Section 19 reports within our area. And they publicly, in front of 180 people, now I'm not sure the facts around this, but I would like to hear the response, was that the County Council Flood Resilience Team were not going to attend. They didn't want to attend. They couldn't attend. Those were all the three words which Elizabeth and I sat in and was quite embarrassed actually, because it put us in a situation. So I was just interested to know whether or not that did happen. However, 2 weeks ago we faced a similar situation, and we were on the phone to you, Sue, on the coach drive estate in Eastwood, and I'm sure this happens across many other districts, and it's important to note houses were once again under threat by surface water. And whilst Nottinghamshire County Council were responsive to my urgent requests for help, one of the main issues was that the gullies could not cope. Now, we spoke about in this review about gully reviews, and in the last report, we heard how Via East Midlands had cleansed 48,000 gullies and outlets. Yet, according to the data sent to me by Via East Midlands, in 24 to 25, in the Eastwood division alone, and I'm using this as an example because I'm a representative of this division, and I'm sure you can all look into your own areas, only 17 gullies had been cleaned.
What, 48,000?
Out of 48,000, 17 gullies. Now, appreciate Councillor Clark might not like me, but that's 0.03% of total gullies cleaned were in Eastwood. I find that disgraceful, Mr. Chairman. Do you agree with me that the prevention, which is outlined in this report, is the most important thing when it comes to protection from flooding, and funding should be fairly, and I use the word fairly lightly, allocated to ensure that the residents' properties are protected? So, just in review, my two questions are, if Sue and her team could answer whether or not the reason for not attending that meeting was, and my second question is, it comes to protection from flooding, and funding should be fairly allocated to ensure the residents' properties are protected. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sure that reflects quite well within the requirements.
In terms of the recommendations, yeah. Go ahead, please. Thank you.
Well, first of all, whatever that meeting isn't part of your review, Chairman. And secondly, I have no idea whether that claim about 17 is true or not, because I haven't checked it. So
I assume we can.
But it's not part of your.
No, I mean we can get an answer on that data in terms of numbers, can't we, for specific areas? We talked earlier in the highways review section specifically. You're after geographic data for pothole repairs. I'm pretty sure we can access the same data for gullies as well.
Yeah, I think the point, Councillor Clark, that you're not listening to is that in the review we speak about a full review of gully cleaning, and I'm making reference to 24 to 25 in relation to Eastwood, which is factually correct. Okay, as per the email that I've received.
But that's a question about
absolutely, but it comes back to this report in the state of that we are looking at full gully review, and I'm asking, and it comes with the final question: how and should the funding fairly be allocated to ensure the residents' properties are protected? And on that reflection, I would like to hear from Councillor Clark instead of bypassing my question. Thank you, Chair.
I mean, well, I know. Look, the fact is that your area will be included in this review. It's the whole of the county, so your area will be included in that review. So as a result, if we're reviewing the whole county, then by definition, we'll be checking into all the gullies within the county. So that covers that part of your question. In terms of the MP question, I do agree that's nothing to do with this, and I'd suggest maybe put that in an email and request that information directly with the flooding department. That's nothing to do with this review. And the final part of your question around the allocation of funds, again, that is also not part of this review. So I would say the part about has Eastwood been given, will it be included in the review fairly across the whole of the Shire? The answer is absolutely it will, because it's a part of it. The other two questions aren't anything to do with the review, and so can't be answered in this forum, I'm afraid.
With all due respect, Chairman, thank you for that. But it's a simple yes or no answer. You've said yes. I'd just like to hear it from Councillor Clark. Yes or no?
I'm sure you will. There's other meetings for that.
No, but it does relate to the review, Chairman, because the question is, will it be fairly allocated?
That's not in the review.
Yes, it is. With the gully review cleaning, will it be fairly allocated? Yes or no?
I've just said that. Can you point?
That's fine, Chair. Can I hear it from Councillor Clark?
Can you point within this recommendation where it specifically talks about money, please?
Yeah. So if the whole thing, when we're talking about the review, it's not necessarily financially. What I'm asking is, will it be fairly allocated?
You're talking about financially.
No, I'm asking for fairly.
The review clearly states that the gully cleaning will be happening across the whole of Nottinghamshire. So that includes your area. Unless you're not part of Nottinghamshire, I'm not aware of a boundary review that's taken place in the national county
And
boundary.
I'm asking if it'll be fairly allocated.
Oh, yeah, fine. You can ask that as much as you want. But if it's going around the whole of the county, then every part of the county will be reviewed. And
Yeah, with all due respect, we're talking about the point.
Okay.
Just let the cabinet member answer the question. Yes or no?
It's not a point for it's not a point for this meeting. I'm sure Councillor Clark will provide you a written confirmation of that information.
I just think it needs to be noted that the council is clearly trying to avoid the question.
You've had an opportunity to make a point. I'll put it to you if you want to ask the question.
Yeah, I can very easily answer your question to me, Chairman, by saying that I welcome all the recommendations of your review, at which I will read out the list of attendees at your review, which was yourself, Councillor Callaghan, Councillor Saddington and Councillor Upton. So your four members who know what your review was and the detail of your review, know the contents of it, I welcome those recommendations which will be coming to Cabinet. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Yeah, and just as a point to go with that, Councillor Oliver, if you did want that issue mentioned and covered in that review, you know, if you put forward somebody to come and attend the review from your group, that's a good opportunity to be involved with that. And then when it comes to this point in the process, you can sit there quite proudly and say, I raised this issue around the finance and where that money was spent. But if you're not involved in the review, because you've not sent a member to attend the review, coming back at the end of it and saying, I wanted that bringing up, I'm afraid just isn't relevant. And like I've said, you can write any time to the cabinet member and get a request and an answer on that. And I'd suggest that that's what you do on this item. Thank you very much. I've got some more questions now. If I can go to Councillor Matt Barney, please.
Thank you, and thank you again to officers. It is quite difficult actually as a ward member to stay on track and keep this high level about the report, what it's about, just because the timing, we're facing in our own communities the most dire and difficult circumstances, and it's really hard to separate ourselves from that without the huge empathy we have for our residents who find themselves flooded, in some cases within 12 months, having just got back into the homes, back to square one. And the numbers of people involved, it's just absolutely awful. So huge empathy in that respect. And I appreciate it's difficult for us as members to stay focused. I also want to make a quick comment. It's just in light of the empathy as well about flood wardens, which again, I know isn't really appropriate, but I feel it's important that we do. The level of abuse that our flood wardens suffer is just ridiculous. Even from residents, in some cases, that have known each other for a long time, even though the flood wardens, it seems people think they have a right to ignore local flood wardens to the most astonishing degree. And I'm just amazed by all of our flood wardens in my patch in 3 different communities now, how resilient they are and how they carry on because they see the greater good and the value in what they're trying to achieve. I did wonder whether, again, it's not relevant to this committee, and you can tell me to shut up, but whether we could look at protecting them perhaps with cameras, with other measures that you see with the forces, just to actually give them the status and the right that they deserve. Side issue, I was also pleased to see our local MP, James Naish, raise this issue in Parliament in defence of flood wardens. So let's all unite across political lines to protect our flood wardens. They do the most vital job. Now, thank you for letting me say all that. Getting to the report, I wholeheartedly endorse all 13 recommendations. Who wouldn't? I mean, goodness, anything we can possibly do to make our response more akin, more appropriate, more rapid, to help in any way, to work closer across authorities, across services, all makes complete and rational sense. But getting to a higher strategic level, I think even in this report, I wonder as I read it whether we're considering actually that the game has changed, that the climate which we're facing, whether that be because of climate change or other matters, it's changing rapidly. And we know that we're likely to not hit a 1.5 degree target. In the last few years, even since I've been councillor, we're seeing these weather events happening more than once a year. And I just wonder whether there's even going back to the 2010 Act, are there bigger questions we need to be asking here beyond these responses, which are very, how do we respond to this ongoing issue of flooding on a week? But is there a bigger set of questions we should be asking about planning consents, where we plan emergency responses, how we respond, and also how we work cross-border and on a national basis with some of this stuff? So that's my question. There ought to be consideration of the fact that rules have changed. We're getting more inclement weather more often, and actually we can't continue probably to continuous business as usual. Any comments on that?
I think Councillor Barney's quite right in his assumptions. I'm sure there is more that can be done, and more discussions with planning authorities in terms of floodplains, etc. always needs to be taken into consideration. Floodplains are a moving feast. Floods happen in different parts of different river plains at different times, and it's trying to anticipate them as much as possible. There are some areas that are a lot more prone to flooding than others, and it's incumbent upon planning authorities to probably, as is indicated, take extra account of the potential consequences.
Thank you very much. Councillor Callaghan, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Page 35, paragraph 94, discusses flood warnings. So my question is, does the council have its own flood wardens separate to the Environment Agency? Part of one, or are they part of one larger network? So I think it's to you, sir.
I don't know if I could invite Sue Jakes probably to answer that, Chair.
Yes, just to concur with the views in the room, the flood wardens are absolutely terrific. They do an amazing job. We've got 39 active schemes across the county with 550 flood wardens, which nationally is the largest scheme in the country. And we are very, very thankful for all the help and the support we get. We are trying to it is confusing. So the Nottinghamshire County Council flood signage scheme wardens are the 550 crew. They are trained and equipped by us as Notts County Council. There are some flood wardens that sit outside that with some other communities that are looked after in a different way, but we are trying very hard to amalgamate those together. They are looked after by the EA, and there is some financial work to look at with regards to those, but in times of response we very much see them as all working together. We can contact them all, we have their contact details, and we try to, they just do an amazing job.
And that ties in with the community emergency plans and all that, doesn't it, with the recommendation for, yeah. Okay, great. Thank you for that. Councillor Upton, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I represent the Radcliffe-on-Trent division, which its northern boundary runs along the River Trent from West Bridgeford to Gunthorpe Bridge. I've lived in the Radcliffe village for 50 years, so I've a pretty good knowledge of the flooding over those decades, and I have to say it's getting more significant, more intense in recent years through climate change or whatever. And I sat on the review group that helped prepare this report, and I would like to thank officers for their support at that review group, and also officers that, in my opinion, give me excellent information and support whenever there is flooding in the Radcliffe division. There was flooding, and we had a Section 19 report because so many houses were flooding in Radcliffe. I have, over the years, met Ruth Edwards on site at the banks of the Trent, and recently James Naish MP, and asked both of them to petition and try and get the profile of the flooding in this division raised in Parliament for more effective flood protection for what I call the lower Trent. I mean, there's been significant flood protection done upstream, if I can call it that, from Trent Bridge, but not an awful lot south or downstream. And I think, we are looking at millions, if not billions, of River Trent flood protection that's needed, and it falls to the Environment Agency. In the meantime, I think this report goes a long way to quantify what's needed, and I absolutely support the 13 recommendations, but I would say that, wouldn't I, as part of the review group? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Upton. Any comments? Councillor Sanders, do you want to come back on the point before I get to the last two speakers?
I would like to come back on a point, and I probably shouldn't be saying this in this point of the meeting, as I was a member of the scrutiny group. But what has come to my notice more recently, and including a fortnight ago, we have the sandbags and aquabags, but I don't know what would be better than those, apart from their actual flood barriers. But when you go to people's houses, this may be their fault, I don't know, but the aqua sacks, they just put them by the door, whereas you are supposed to soak them. We were standing in flood water, banging up and down with our feet, trying to get the aqua sack totally wet. They are in such a panic when they arrive. They don't actually know what to do. Whether there's some instructions inside, I don't know. But most of the houses you go to, they're floated down the garden. And even if they're wet, they're not terribly efficient. And the sandbags, I arrived at a house even last week with all the sandbags away from the door. I know there's not a lot of other protection we can have short of barriers, but if they were any heavier, you couldn't lift them, the sandbags. But I don't know that they're the best protection for the residents. What is, I don't know. But the ordinary sandbags are, they do get moved by the weather. And the aqua sacks, they don't seem to know they've got to wet them. So they put them up, and of course they float down the garden. Is there any better measure that we could consider other than making them so heavy, the sandbags, that people can't lift them? It is a problem. It is a problem. We go there to help them. When we get there, the sandbags and the aqua bags, I don't think are as
Paragraph 58 of the report does talk about the sandbags and things like that as well, but I don't know if you want to add any extra meat onto that bone.
I think, Chairman, just take the comments on board. It's an operational, specific operational thing. I'm sure that officers take those comments on board as part of the review and look at see how resources are best employed.
Councillor Hollis, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm going to try and be as brief as I possibly can on this, but you'll know that our group is passionate about this issue, and I want to pick that up straight away. Because it's been alluded that our members aren't attended, but I think it also needs to be said that we've often mistreated. And I think it needs to be pointed out that the independent group, as of the next full council, are going to be the official opposition at this council. We represent more councils, 3 times more councils in Nottinghamshire than the Conservatives do. Our voice cannot be excluded.
Sorry, can I ask your point? You said mistreated. What do you mean mistreated?
If you let me finish, Mr.
Sorry,
Chairman.
yeah,
I'm sorry to be a pain, but while you're the constituent,
because I've obviously been the chair of these committees, and I want to understand how.
Yeah,
if you're saying that I've mistreated you somehow,
and I'm the vice chairman of this meeting.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward
and in many pre-meetings, only at the last pre-meeting when I raised an objection to this, I was forcibly removed from the meeting, the team's meeting, after we were listening to a presentation.
Councillor Hollis, it has nothing to do with this report at all.
It is.
If you want to raise this issue, then
well, I'm going to move on to the report.
Please go to the report, please.
My point being is throughout this meeting, you don't interrupt any other member. After one of our
Paddington, actually.
After every single time after one of our members speak, you feel it important to clarify the council's position, whereas our role is to scrutinise what Mr. Clark is doing and the officers that work for him. It's not our job to be an apologist or an excuser for the questions, quite rightly, the questions that need to be answered. So, and I think the way you've interjected, even when I'm objecting to your objections, and I'm not a regular member of this committee, Mr. Chairman. I'm appointed by full council as the vice chairman and speak for independents across the entirety of Nottinghamshire, which are now the biggest political group inside the Shire, and our voice needs to be heard. And flooding is an issue. And I want to pick up on some of the valid points that have been made, and I think the importance of this report.
Okay, can you just get to the point about the report, please? Because
flooding
it's
is
not
different.
political.
Flooding is different
Right,
to
thank you. So you're talking
our
about flooding,
members
thank
as
you.
independents, but also members of the council. So Councillor Saddington raises a really good point. You know, her division is one of the most affected issues of flooding, but Councillor Darby in Collingham is also. And the flooding issues there are different. Of course, we are talking major rivers, streams, etc. The Trent, if you live in Holme, if you live in Girton. I was only in Girton a few days ago, and I think a third of the village is currently unoccupied because the houses have been flooded that badly, and they've got all this bizarre, more tradesmen than people there. And I'm sure Councillor Saddington's villages have the same issue, which is really disturbing. But I see that as a real positive. I mean, Councillor Darby may see things differently to me, but I can see physically the investment and stuff that the county council's done there. You know, with physical barriers. You could argue they could have been done sooner, etc. But there's been a serious investment there. But I think when it comes to other areas in the county, the issue is completely different. And I see this is where this report and the efforts that this report intends to achieve need to be focused on. So if you take, as an examples, my division, Councillor Oliver's and Councillor Williamson's divisions, often they're completely artificially manufactured because we've not cleaned the gullies. And on Sunday I went round just Huthwaite Market Square. Every single gully is blocked to the point that the soil is overflowing. How do we expect these drains to be to do anything? Eastwood, the Hall estate was flooded because the gullies are blocked. 43,000 gullies have been cleaned. This is when I was ejected from the meeting. 43,000 gullies have been cleaned, but 17 out of 43,000 were in Eastwood. If you'd have cleaned 10 more, the Hall estate wouldn't have been flooded. But the team that Sue leads does a great job. I think sadly it's the people that are above her politically that don't seem to acknowledge there's two different problems. The gullies need to be cleaned. We have the machines. And as an example for members, and please check this, we had a pre-meeting 2 weeks ago, which, like I say, I was kicked out of.
Correction, you were not kicked out of it, you left. You disconnected from the meeting. I was on that meeting. You put the phone down because you didn't get your way. That's what happened. It was very embarrassing.
The next day, the county council put a Facebook video up of drain cleaners in Eastwood and Huthwaite. I mean, I refuse to imagine that's a coincidence because the three members that sit on this committee represent Eastwood and Huthwaite. That wasn't a coincidence. And it's silly political games like this that just are laughable.
Tom, look, can you just refer back to the report at some point? Because that's what we're here to talk about. And you're wasting everybody in this room.
What my request needs to be.
Right, thank you.
And I think the only point I've not touched on so far is the impact of developers. So developers often put lots of sludge and stuff on the roads. The county council don't seem to object on a flooding basis very often on new developments. I'd like to see that raised as part of this report, and maybe as part of formal recommendations that Martin's going to read to us shortly. If there could be some eyesight and focus on actually what developers can contribute on a flooding point. But also there's some acknowledgement that resources, as Councillor Oliver said, are shared more fairly across the county. And I think on that point, which I thought we can't ignore as well, at the minute we've got partners in districts and boroughs. How can we get the most out of them? But also how we future-proof this report with the fact of this council won't exist in 4 years and the new unitary will take over. How can this report be used by the new authority to maximise communities that we all represent, which of course will be in exactly the same place as just represented by a different council. So I've tried to be constructive, but I think it's also important that we raise some of the political issues that are clearly issues to our communities. But thank you.
Yeah, there is a point. The one point that's referenced in the report that you talked about was actually the road sweeping, which is actually featured in there. So absolutely, working with districts and boroughs to better ensure that roads are swept. In fact, it's recommendation 8 to make sure roads are better swept to ensure that we get less leaf litter down the drains is correct. Your other points around meetings, you know, like I've rightly said, you've always been included. You've always been asked to join any of these groups. For whatever reason, your group hasn't chosen to do that. That's up to you. The points in this report are what we're reviewing based on the review that was carried out by those people that did attend from political groups who are the actual opposition as things stand, and who actually did attend and attended well to all of these things. And if it does so happen that the representation does change, I truly hope you take up the opportunity to start getting involved with these things, so that when we get to these meetings, they can be carried out in a more professional manner, where we can go through each of these individual points and the points you've raised. You can stand there and say, I raised that point in the review, and now I'd like some further discussion on it. I'm incredibly disappointed with what you said about the last meeting. I really am. And I don't think there's anything else to answer in that because it's been covered in the report. At this point, I'm going to move on to Councillor Butler, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, just going back to the report, I do endorse the recommendations. We are sitting here this morning. The sky is grey outside. We've heard on the news this morning that we're about to have another major storm, Storm IOI. And frankly, I am sitting here dreading it because I'm fearful, not for me, but I know and I fear that there are going to be parts of my area which I'm going to be having to be talking to Sue and her team and getting their help again, who do a tremendous job. And it's all very well pontificating, but the storm, call it what you will, does not reflect political boundaries, and we're discussing things and wasting time raising things that are not relevant to this report. But anyway, one of the key aspects, as far as I'm concerned, in this report is point number 10. And I know that Sue and her team often hear from me talking about this, and that is the riparian land ownership. I am convinced, and the flood team agree, that a lot of the problems we're facing, that our residents are facing, who, as I say, are sitting there now dreading what's likely to be happening on Friday or Saturday or whenever the storms come. I'm still convinced that despite the work that we've done so far in engaging with riparian owners, I think there is. What I'm asking really is, what I'm asking and saying, that I think there is more to do with riparian owners, because we've all seen fields flooding. We've all seen the water cascading off fields down paths which may or may not be ours, and then the effect they have. So I think this is a good start that we're highlighting this riparian ownership responsibility. But what I would simply ask is, and it's a difficult question to ask because of resources, are we doing enough to really get home to those riparian owners who either don't accept or don't understand their responsibilities for their land? And as a result, we as an authority are having to sort out and help our residents. And we have to remember as well, much of the flooding that takes place, contrary to what some people might say, is not actually the council's fault. It is a result of what is or isn't happening under ownership. So I really just wanted to make that point, and it is so important, this report, and I'm sure colleagues will agree that we are sitting with some trepidation as to what's going to be happening in the next couple of days. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Gower, do you want to reply? Sorry.
Just very quickly, Chairman, in answer to Councillor Butler's reference to recommendation 10 of your report, which refers to the riparian owners, there is a programme that's been instigated to write to riparian owners to remind them of their obligations, and this encloses a a leaflet which explains the riparian responsibilities that are there by law, and it is a constant challenge to keep reminding riparian owners where ditches do need. Often when it's out in the countryside and farmers come along and prune the hedges, etc., and all the cuttings fall into the ditch right in front, and that builds up and eventually blocks or proves no longer to be a ditch. So certainly there is a schedule, because I've seen letters that go out from via regularly to riparian owners to remind them of that.
It also makes you wonder if you could do it time someone purchases a new home. I mean, we need to almost get that in that leaflet straight away, especially if they're next to a riparian owned, because it seems a lot of people buy houses and don't realise the responsibilities when they get them.
Yeah, I mean, that is, sometimes it could be the people selling the houses that don't highlight it, or maybe it's the purchasing solicitor hasn't picked that up and doesn't highlight it. But the fact is that quite often there are purchases of new houses right next to a watercourse, and they build a fence to hide it, and sometimes the new purchaser is oblivious of the fact they have that responsibility.
Thank you for that. Councillor Gowland, please.
Thank you. So first of all, well, my main point is to ask, to what extent are the preparations proactive as opposed to reactive? So to what extent are the resources in particular areas ready to be used, and to what extent are they centralised? And one of the reasons I asked that is because I asked for the map of the location of the resilience hubs. Is that the right word, Mark? Sorry, I've forgotten. And I got this map. It's confidential, so I don't know if you can get the details from it. But what you can see is that clearly these resilient hubs are along the river, and or hotspots, which are community areas that have historically flooded. There are none in the west, very, very few in the south, none in the built-up areas in the west and the south. And we know, due to climate change, I think, nothing's 100% certain, but I think we can be pretty certain when it's icy in whole Florida and it's burning in January, we've got a problem. That this needs to be revisited, because now it can flood anywhere. I mean, Councillor Clark, you might be disturbed to realise there are none near your area, which I know has flooded recently. Related to that is the riparian responsibilities. So I've been, and I think some of my residents have been horrified to discover they have, not me personally, but that they have riparian responsibilities, because there are land drains going under houses and under gardens in the area that need to be maintained. Nobody apparently knew them there. It's very hard to get a map. The council has a map, but you can't download it. I don't know, the map belongs to the EA or something like that. And so people have responsibilities that they just simply aren't aware of, and this is obviously causing flooding of gardens. And each time it happens, it's going higher and higher, getting closer and closer to the back doors. So I think this really needs reviewing properly, because expecting people in the middle of a big housing estate, or sort of 1930s housing estate, to suddenly realise that they're responsible for some land drain is a bit much, really. It needs to be dealt with centrally, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Sue, thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question, Councillor Gallagher. I'll come back on the resilient stores first, if I may. So we have 50 odd of those registered with us as a local authority across the county. They are very much community-led schemes. Some district councils do support those communities with supplying funding for resilient stores. We are setting up the flood signage schemes. We always talk about having those resilient stores, but they are community led. So we are looking to the towns and parish councils to be able to operate something like that, and we go back to then that being a responsibility of a group of volunteers. And some of those volunteers will be those ones that are seriously affected by the flooding, and it's really, really difficult. So happy to support where we can, community led, and there is some funding available with some districts to support that. With regards to riparian owners, I concur with your views on it is news to a lot of people that they are riparian owners, and it's very difficult sometimes for those people to accommodate their responsibilities, and it is a county-wide difficulty. I think the flood risk management team and VIA have been doing a lot of work on the ground with going out to see people, to talk to them about their riparian responsibilities, rather than a letter just landing on your doorstep that you're not quite sure what to do with, and that we've been trying to help people as much as we can. I think we will eventually get to a point where we start to look at enforcement for those that we cannot work with. There is a process in play to do that.
Yeah, sure.
It would be it would be really helpful if the land drain maps could be made widely available. I have to be honest, I can't quite remember what the problem was, but they were, copyright at some level, and I think having some level of map that we could just publicise to people. I'm sure it's not just local to me; it's a wider area where the land drains can be shown to the residents. They actually understand.
So, are you happy with that? Yeah.
Well, it's.
Yes.
If it's a legal issue, then I don't. It needs
investigating.
I can't give you an answer, Chairman.
No, it's fine. Okay. Sorry, Councillor Barney, do you want to come back on something?
Yeah, I just wanted to just be clear, just in the response to Councillor Gowland, in case I didn't communicate properly. I absolutely 100% am convinced that the effects we're seeing are due to climate change, and I'm incredibly worried about it. I think it's the most serious issue that we face on that.
Thank you for that. That's great. Anybody else want to add anything else at this point? Okay. So I'm going to ask Martin at this point to read out a summary of the discussion and to detail any issues that have arisen. Thank you.
Well, I won't be summarising because I think I'll be here quite a long time. But just to confirm what will happen next, obviously, if you vote to accept the review and send it on to Cabinet, it will go to Cabinet in the March meeting where there'll be a full response. And then what we'll do as part of the work programming process, we'll bring an update report back during the next municipal year, which then provides an update on the outcomes of the responses that were provided at Cabinet. And also just say thank you for part of the review. Obviously, the officers were really helpful because it was a really complex review for giving us all the information. Thanks to the members, and also thanks to Catherine who wrote the actual report. So yeah, it went really well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Echo all that. So if we can move to the vote then, please, and take a show of hands. All those in favour of the report, please show. And that's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for all of your comments, and appreciate that. We're now going to move on to the work programme. Yeah, go on, Martin.
Yeah, I'll just be really brief. There's been a little bit of moving around of items just to make sure that agendas are manageable. So next time, I've got crime and disorder, rights of way, and the local nature recovery strategy, which should be a really interesting item. And then it's just the normal things. If there's anything further to add that you'd like to look at, just let myself and the chairman know. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much. I just want to pass on my thanks to everybody in the meeting, all of your contributions, and I do mean all of them. And thank you to all of the officers and the cabinet member for your attendance today. And that's it until March. Have a safe journey home. Thank you very much.